Hi everybody! Today we're going to be going over the Big 3 assignment, where you'll be answering some of those 3 important questions that employers in graduate schools love to ask. You will need to do screencasting for this assignment or some other video recording. You may have the capability to do this on a smartphone or a camera where you can upload the file to a computer. Otherwise, screencast-o-matic.com is a great site to use if you've got a computer that has access to a camera and microphone. If you don't have a computer with this capability, remember that you can check one out from your Miami campus library to borrow. So you could borrow a laptop with a microphone and video camera and use one of the new study rooms, if you're at Miami Middletown campus, for example, in order to have a private space to do this recording. So don't fret if you personally don't have access to these tools. You can have access by borrowing stuff from the university. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind as you are answering your interview questions. Nonverbal stuff matters. How you dress, how you speak, how you look. So make sure in completing this assignment that you are dressing in a business-appropriate attire, a suit, a formal shirt, a tie, a nice dressy outfit, so that you look the part. The other thing is to make sure that you are making good eye contact, as if you were answering that question with somebody face to face. If it would help you to do this by having a friend help you with the recording so they ask the question and you have somebody to look at, please utilize that resource. You want to look the person in the eye enough without staring all the time. You don't want to look down to the side or slouch. So make sure that your body language is conveying confidence, directness, and assertiveness, which are things employers usually like to see in their employees. Now, to answer the 3 questions specifically, I'm going to give it a shot and model for you what I might have said back when I was trying to get into grad schools or getting jobs right out of college if somebody asked me the Big 3. So, the first question, what are some things you can tell me about yourself? If an employer or graduate school asks that question, I would say, well, first off, I'm always up for new adventures. I've had the chance to study abroad in a number of countries, including Hong Kong, or now China, Belize, Italy, and Jamaica. And in these experiences, I've learned how to solve problems, to be independent, yet how to rely on others and ask questions when I need help. I have also had a love of doing research. I'm interested in going to graduate school in clinical psychology, not only because I want to help people with stresses or concerns that they have, but I want to understand more about how relationships work and to develop my research and counseling skills to better understand how nonverbal communication helps us in everyday relationships and in cases of psychological disorders like depression or anxiety, where our nonverbal communication skills or lack of them might be having connections to some troubles that we're having. I am a hard worker. You can see that by my job record. I often had several jobs in college and maintained a strong grade point average while I was really involved on campus, and everything from a mime troupe to fraternities and sororities to intramural athletics and several other campus organizations. I have learned over time how to do time management well so that I can take on lots of tasks and find enjoyment in getting those tasks completed. Second question that employers love to ask is, tell me about your strengths. One of the things that I would say is a strength for me is I like to make things happen. If I see a problem, I try to fix it. If I see a need, I help to meet it. So, for example, in college, one of the things that we noticed is that we could use our miming skills that we were interested in, and as someone who still studies nonverbal communication, that's part of why I was interested in that group, to help cheer up children who were sick in hospitals, to help tell messages about faith stories to institutions. So we helped to put together a mime troupe that did not exist before in order to help use those skills and resources that we had to help people in our community. In the same way, when I was an undergrad, I helped with a class for people with disabilities. I didn't have any experience in this group. I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, but I figured I would give it a try and I could learn as I went. So I'm not afraid to jump in and try new things, even if it's not an area where I have expertise. Really, the only way to develop skills is to get started. And I found after working with people with disabilities for a short time that my communication skills improved. I was better able to work with people who were nonverbal. I was better able to work with people with cerebral palsy whose bodies didn't work, but they understood. And those are skills that I developed by being willing to jump in headfirst into new situations. Another skill for me is that I'm a pretty good communicator, and I get along with lots of different kinds of people. I never hung out with the same group of people twice in college. I love traveling to new cultures to see how people communicated there. And I'm fairly adaptive, so I can take a situation, like when I was studying abroad, we had a situation while I was in Hong Kong where I had to travel on my own. So I had to learn enough conversational Chinese to get on and off the bus without the police stopping me, and know how to get home at night after a 40-minute travel that included changing several trains and buses across a major international area. In terms of communication skills, I'm an extroverted person who strives to get along with others. So while I'm not afraid to stand my ground on issues that are important to me, I also am a kind-hearted person that does that in connection with others. So I like to be involved in solving problems, but I don't take over situations. An example I can give there also came from my work and study abroad. So while I was in Hong Kong helping to do daily caretaking for people with disabilities, changing bedpans, feeding, helping to read stories or do activities, they noted that they needed an extra set of hands to go on holiday to England to take 8 or so of the individuals along with them. I volunteered. I hadn't been to England before either or helped in transporting individuals, but I worked with the team to help have a smooth journey during our month-long extension of the trip in England, and also find out where I could be of service. The third question I'd like to answer today is about a weakness. If you asked me one of my greatest weaknesses and what some of my weaknesses are, one of the things that comes along with being a self-starter who's willing to get involved in projects is learning how to balance. And there are times when I have taken on a little bit more than I could handle. And what is important about that, though, is that I don't give up or freak out or run away from responsibilities. I find a way to finish. So there may be times when I lose a little sleep or spend a bit more time at work than on my favorite hobbies in order to get things done. But that's what I would do to compensate for being someone who loves to be active and taking on lots of different projects. I'm learning over time how to prioritize and say no to things that are less important so that I can invest that work time in the things that are most important. In any case, I always manage to complete my work, even if it comes with a personal sacrifice of time. I like to be competent at what I'm doing, and I encourage that in my colleagues or people that are working under me, and I don't expect anyone to do something I'm not willing to do myself. Another one of my weaknesses is that sometimes with projects, I will jump in head first and get started, which means I make mistakes. Along the way in learning how to do event planning, I never have had a perfect outline where every little thing down to the minute like a wedding planner is ready to go. I see the big picture, and I have never had any cases where I've had a major incident or something disastrously go wrong. But in event planning, little things always go wrong. What I'm good at, though, is noticing a mistake I've made or someplace I could have planned a little better, and I don't make the same mistake again. So I'm perfectly willing to admit that sometimes I see the big picture before the details, but I'm also a conscientious person who's pretty good at details and adapts. So when I make a mistake, I fix it. For example, I recently helped to design a program at Miami called the Mom Family Fun Fest, where we invited families with small children to campus to have a good time at a low cost and to learn about nonprofit agencies in the community. the first time that we had this event, we had a popcorn machine, and we set the popcorn machine under the fire sensors for the sprinklers. So yeah, the fire department got called. What we did calmly was explain to everybody that we needed to go outside for a moment until the fire department checked. We knew the machine had set off the sensor, and we'd be back inside in a few minutes. We gave people extra tickets for the time that they had outside for games and things. No one panicked, and I learned never to set the popcorn machine under the sensor again. So it's important to have a cool head when things do go wrong, to be able to strategize, problem solve, and work through mistakes rather than being afraid of them, because mistakes is how we learn. Now, that is just a brief sample of how I might answer the big three. The things for you to keep in mind. 1, describe yourself with confidence, both verbally and non-verbally. Give some descriptions specifically about what you're good at, and back that up with examples. Anybody can say, I'm a good communicator. But if you say it like this, I'm a good communicator, no one will believe you. You also ought to be able to point to things in your record, either in class, in leadership opportunities, in organizations, in volunteering, in jobs. It really doesn't matter where, as long as you're able to back up the things that you're claiming with some specifics. You may do this when answering the question just briefly, and realize that they will ask you for some more information if they want. So your answers to each of your big three questions should be, somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. You don't want it so short that you only say a few words or a sentence and nothing else. And you don't want to go on and on and on where the other person has no chance to interact as well. A good way to practice this is to think of having a couple of key ideas, 1, 2, 3 things that you might say in answer to that question. Here's a characteristic, here's an example. Here's a characteristic, here's an example. And to try it several times. Know that this time you're recording, unless you're just naturally gifted at being in front of a camera, is not going to go well the first time. In making my Big 3 video for you today, I think I've started and stopped the camera at least 50 times. So don't be afraid to try again until you get it right and you look like the picture that you're seeing on the camera. You want to practice this before you go into employers so you don't stutter there, say lots of ums or vocal fillers or look away or fidget and twitch with your hair and play. Right? When you present for an employer, you want to be relatively calm and stationary. You want to make good eye contact and sell them that you are the right person.